Hi, friends. Welcome again to Blue Horizons. I'm Shankar Hemmady, and we're going to talk to some of the leaders who are shaping the future of the entire cloud and what's beyond the clouds. So, Naveed is a really good person. I had my first one on one with him today, but I've known him forever because of how he writes, how he describes the future fearlessly. So, Naveed, please tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what makes you so fearless to talk about technology.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to have an ability to spend time with people who should have been friends for a long time. And given our commonalities, we should have met long time ago. It's a great opportunity. Thanks so much. So yeah, my background is that I got interested in technology very early on when I was only 12, 13 years old. My father just happened to be in London for some reason, and he found a computer. Uh, Back then, Timex Sinclair was a computer that was made by a company called Sinclair, and uh, and then he brought that. The only thing is that he didn't know that you have to have a computer, has to have an operating system, has to have some other thing. So he just brought whatever he could. So even as a very young person, 13, 14, 15-year old, I had to go figure it out. At that time, there was no help around that. They were generally computers are only used in banks, and individual human beings did not have computers. There was no concept of like that. People didn't even have calculators back then. So I learned from there, and then when I was doing my engineering, I got really involved in how to program computers and things like that. So when I finally arrived in US, it became clear to my advisor that this guy has no interest other than computers. So he actually walked me from his department, which was actually control system theory and mechanical engineering, to computer engineering, saying that I think you belong here. And the University of Nebraska at Lincoln took care of my scholarships, helped me shape, and I fell in love with that place in Nebraska. And I did my master's and PhD there. And after doing my PhD, I went to a city called Kalamazoo, Western Michigan University, because in that phase of my life, I call it the tree hugging pinko phase of my life. I hated money. I wanted to just dedicate my life to mankind and teach. And I looked for an undergraduate institute where I could actually just teach humanity. That's the best thing I wanted to do. Things didn't turn out that way, but I went, and then I ended up teaching there for 7, 8 years. During that time, I wrote 4, 5 textbooks, in particular on chip design, because that was the need of the time. In 1988, we didn't have a textbook for physical design, the part of chip design where you take a high level description and convert into a piece of silicon. That is my area of expertise. I did that. Also started a company with some of my students, and eventually, by a chance, ended up meeting Andy Grove at a Berkeley lecture that I was giving, and that led me to become a consultant for Intel for a few years, 2, 3 years, and then I joined Intel in 1993. Spent the next 10 years at Intel, and then after I left Intel, I spun out a part of Intel called Intel Microelectronics, which I had started there, and that became Open Silicon. We raised $45 million for that company and sold that company in 2007, 2008 for $252 million. That became my first exit. Since that time, I have been started, co-founded 18 different semiconductor companies, raised over $1 billion for them, and had been and very fortunate to be part of many excellent teams, and worked a lot on open source, RISC-V, worked on even chips for Bitcoin, working on FPGA chips, whole bunch of ASICs. I've been part of, God knows, around 300 plus chip projects in the last 25, 30 years. So that has been my career. And my passion has been, how can we now make sure that chips are always low cost, become available to the masses, and we continue the revolution that we have done in the last 40, 60 years. Because I believe that if chips and electronics in general become more and more lower cost, it will continue to drive the revolution that we have going, which is connecting people to internet, digitizing our world, making poor people have more chances, because rich people always had the chances. It is lower middle class and lower class people around the world have ability to participate in commerce around the world, and it is uplifting masses. And I think this has been made possible by a revolution in software running on the revolution on hardware. And that is run because we have figured out a way to make chips lower cost and more available. And without that, low cost, laptops, low cost phones, low cost communication devices, low cost networking gear, and eventually, data centers would not be possible. So that's kind of the journey I've had, and this is the journey I'm on. And I hope to continue the journey where I can use my skills, my experience in semiconductors and related fields to continue to bring more interesting companies, but continue somehow participate in the revolution that we started, many years ago, to see if we can continue to participate in that.
That really brings up a wonderful point, Naveed. There's a lot of concern, like it has been over the last several revolutions, that with AI ML, with all this kind of automation, people may not have jobs to do. Um, I see a different picture, and I know I've heard you speak about these things. Would you like to kind of explore what the future will look like, say, 5 years from now, with all this compute power, with AI ML, with the 5G, 6G connectivity? Where do you see the world going?
So I I think in order to see the future, sometimes you have to see the past, right? So let's say one of the fun things I do, I watch a lot of Western movies. Right? So I look at 1850s. Look at all the guys who were riding horses and had made wagons. Then they must have heard of, oh, in France and Germany, somebody has made a motor car. So they must have thought, oh, wait a minute. If the motor cars become prevalent, what will happen to all the horses and all the wagons and things like that? And then eventually they became prevalent. By 1910, Ford started making its Model T. There were still horses here. There were still wagons being pulled by the horses. They were pretty commonplace. And took another 20, 30 years, and they got replaced by cars. What happened to all the guys who used to ride horses? What happened to all the guys who were making wagons? Did they die of hunger? They had no jobs? Did we find them in mental asylums? What happened to them? Actually, nothing. What happens, I think, is that people are very, very, humans learn to survive. They figure out, it takes them time. So actually, the concern that we should have with AI and ML and GPT is not that the change is coming. Change has always been there. The concern should be the change is coming too fast. So the fast is what concerns me. It doesn't concern me. I think humanity has survived many changes before. Technology changes, people adapt, find new jobs, get adjusted. Few people are rendered not very useful by the new technology. They get sidelined, new jobs are created, all that happens. But that all happens if there is enough time, because people take time. If there's just not enough time, what will happen? So my view is that things like AI, ML, Chat GPT is first of all going to make our world better, our cars safer, our work more productive, our education more efficient, our factories better. All of that will become better first. So, which means cheaper goods are available, more communication is available, everything gets better for everybody. Obviously, the side of that is it needs less people, right? So, less people producing more goods, that is what we have to worry about. But the question to me is that would it enable us to create new jobs? I am very much sure that new jobs will be created. Most of these tools will allow people to become more productive. For example, ChatGPT is already being used by people to create the first draft of something, and then they work on that draft. Most humans find it easier to edit than rather start with a blank piece of paper. So if ChatGPT can be a tool that you can use to get the first draft, and then you edit, maybe the final draft may look completely different than the first draft ChatGPT did, but it helped you. It optimized your time. It made you more efficient, right? Same thing with code. People use the first version for ChatGPT, then they end up writing it because, again, editing code much easier than writing from a blank sheet of paper. And secondly, if somebody has already written a version of that code somewhere in some part of the world that during the training ChatGPT ingested, you start there. So first thought I have is that this will make everything better. It will make us more productive. Would it make some jobs go away? Yes, but I'm also sure that it will make new jobs happen that we do not know of today. And I think that's a balancing act that we have played. Only question is, do our education institutions, do our governments help our people adapt to the change, the speed of change? I'm not worried about the change. Change people can handle. People have always handled that. Look, COVID happened, humanity survived. Nothing came to a disastrous close. It was a big challenge. People adapted. People, restaurants adapted. Businesses adapted. World went on. I mean, yes, horribly we lost 7-8 million people. That is correct. But the world, as fundamentally as it stands today, continues, and it will continue to do that. And as horrible as a challenge that we had to face. So I think what we need to do at education institution level, at the government level, at the city level, at the state level, is to put processes in place, systems in place, so that the people are enabled through financial incentives, through training programs to adapt to the change. It will be difficult for them to change themselves. Many will, but we should help the ones which will be on the edge, the fringe, the weaker ones, and which find it difficult. We have to worry about diversity. We have to worry about older people. We have to people, younger people, anybody who was on the fringe. I think state and the government and the education institution should step up and take care of them. I think the other people will probably take care of them because they have always done that.
Yeah, and I find your optimism almost contagious. You also done a lot of work in open source silicon. You're talking about open source technologies. How is that playing out in your mind? And also, how will that enable more players to earn income and grow? Because otherwise, there's a lot of fear around open source also.
So I think many people think that we have done very well in silicon technology and semiconductors. I actually don't think that. I think we haven't done anything yet. The reason we haven't done is because less than 100,000 people, or whatever the number is, who have participated in the technology. I want to live for a day where 10 million people are working in silicon technology. What would have happened then? So I think what didn't happen, which should have happened in 60s and 70s, is that we should have gone to a broader base. It didn't happen. Very nature of the technology, location where it was, internet was not there, many reasons. It just led to certain pockets of innovation. As a result, fewer people worked on it. Actually, it's amazing what those few people, if you look at the silicon technology base, people base is very small. Those few people have really revolutionized the world to a point where silicon technology, semiconductor, is now considered the most important technology on planet Earth. Now imagine a different past. In that past, 10,000 people were not there, 100,000 people, but 1 million or 10 million people were trying to do that. Where would we be? Where would be the devices be? What would be their speeds? What would be the type of materials? What would be the production processes that we would be using today? Probably different. I think we have to broaden the base. We have to go beyond United States and India and China and a few countries in Europe to 70, 80, 90, 100 countries around the world, so that all of those guys can participate in the innovation. I think amazing new things will be discovered. The other day I was talking about, we invented CMOS in 1963, published in IEEE paper. CMOS is still the prevalent way how we design most of the things. How is that in the last 40, 50 years, we have not invented remarkably better ways of designing? Is it because it's good enough? Is it because not enough people are working? What is the case? I don't know. But all I know is that I would like to see a world where a lot more people are contributing in silicon related technology. So open source is a way to do that. Open source is the way to get high school students and college students and graduate students openly exchange ideas with each other. And I think the next big idea will come from some random place. I have no idea. It may be a student in Chile or a graduate student in Brazil, uh, a high school student somewhere in India coming up with an idea. Why don't we do this? And then he explains it on with to his friends. It goes viral with other people. People start looking at it. I believe with chat gpt and other things helping internet, lot of things available, combine that with open source, I'm very optimistic that open source movement will allow us to get the innovation across. Secondly, I think Google is doing a great job. I think the biggest supporter of open source is US government. DARPA has been the biggest supporter, and they have been supporter not quite from an innovation point of view. They are from a very different point of view, from security point of view. DARPA believes the most secure is most open. If, in fact, if you see any DARPA presentation, the first slide is always, and who supported RISC-V, the open source CPU, DARPA, who supported OpenFPGA, DARPA, and I can go down the list, is because DARPA correctly believes that if you buy a technology from one company, pick any company, Intel, Xilinx, AMD, NVIDIA, in which 50, 70 uh, engineers work on it, and eventually you bought it and you put it in some of your top secret projects, you have no idea in the back of that chip, in billions and billions of connections, what is in that chip. Is it possible that there is a backdoor left in there, either in the hardware or in the software stack? Well, that's not possible if it is open source. In open source, that will be discovered long time ago, and it's not possible to put these kind of backdoors. This is the reason DARPA has been supporting. They think, and correctly thinking, that it is more secure. I am from a different point of view. Security is very important, and even more important for US than before today. But I think innovation is also very important, because without innovation, we will not have the new ideas that we need. If you still think about the ideas we've been living on, all happened in 50s and 60s. We have been improving them, yes, but do we have fundamental new ideas? I mean, planarization was invented in 1959, I believe, Jackaroni. Uh, MOS transistors, 57, 58, CMOS, 50, 63. So if you think about all these ideas on which the current semiconductor business is based on, all happened. Now we have refined them, right? Recently, I went to Egypt and I had the opportunity to see the pyramids. So I saw the Great Pyramid of Giza. It took them 1500 years to actually build that, grinding the process over that. The actual process for that particular pyramid was 22 years, using pick a number, 25 to 50,000 people worked on it. But the fundamental idea of pyramid was there for almost 1,000 years. They kept on grinding it, improving it. But as there any new technology came into pyramids, probably not. So I think we are in the same situation. So I believe strongly that I think DARPA is right. Security is important. I think innovation is important. I think if we can get million, 2 million, 10 million people, graduate students, high school students, interested in electronics, and interested in semiconductors, I believe 5, 7, 10, 20 years from now, we will forget silicon, we'll forget the data centers, we'll forget IoT, we'll forget 5G. We'll be completely talking new things, because all that new energy and blood will bring new things that we have not even thought about. And I really think that's the reason I focus a lot on open source, because I think it has a potential of bringing completely new things which I know nothing about today.
That's wonderful. In fact, one reason I wanted to talk to you is you've been a part of many innovations. Can you talk a little bit about that? My own familiar things are sci-fi and rapid silicon that you're working on, but you said you're involved in about 18 companies. So give us an idea of how each one of these could be building blocks in this new future that you envision.
So I think, yeah, so most of these companies are in clusters. For example, if you look at, I have a group of companies I'm involved with the RISC-V. So we ended up creating companies around the world, and we are still, even now, we are currently envisioning some more companies. In particular, I think India has not done as much in RISC-V as it should have done at the commercial level. I think this is an area. Same thing in South America. I believe RISC-V can do a lot more. I think in Chile, in Brazil, I think there are pockets of people. I think in Colombia, there are pockets of people that they can do wonderful work. I think so. I think there is one cluster of companies all related to RISC-V and what can be done with RISC-V. Then there is a cluster of companies which is related to promoting the chip design itself, because I started with open silicon, and then I'm looking at people have problems in packaging, people have problem in testing. How do you take something to high volume? So there is a group of companies in that. And then lately I've been working on FPGA space, and there is a group of companies there. And I always think of group of companies because of the trade war. I think it's not possible to now have companies just one global company. I think the global company idea is being challenged now. So we will have to think about companies that you create in different location regions, which are compliant with whatever rules and regulations that region has. And so everybody can work legally correctly, and still be able to collaborate, and whatever is legally possible, and to work with each other. So I think I'm very excited about open source. I think that's very important. I think I'm very excited about how AI can be used in the design process. So I think that AI, because the design process itself we have done a wonderful job of layering it, and each layer I think is not that complicated. So I think AI can learn the patterns that humans. I mean, if you look at a chip, most of the chips have a standard style. There's always a processor in the middle, there is memories, and then there is IOs on the side, and then things that attach to the IOs are closer to the IOs. Then there is a certain structure, and this structure can be learned. This structure can be practiced by AI tools, and then we can have the first version of these chips at least help us in designing. So we don't need 3,000 people or 2,000 people as we used to have in Intel back in late 90s, early 2000, and maybe some of the Intel teams are still big, but maybe some of these blocks and chips can be done much smaller teams using AI tools. So I think that is something that is very exciting. I think we should fully explore EDA using AI, uh, architecture using AI, verification using AI. I think all of those things have a potential to really become highly productive and efficient. I think then the next thing that I think is quite exciting is being able to do these kind of chips around the world. And the reason I do that is because I think we have a severe headcount shortage in all the major countries. If you look at US, we have a serious problem. If you look at India, we have the same problem. There are a lot more jobs in semiconductor. We don't have enough people. So I think we'll have to go to other countries. We'll have to maybe look at Egypt. We have to look at potentially Pakistan. We have to look at Bangladesh. So I think there is also this international aspect, that which are the friendly countries where we can go, where we can have these companies, and not having to constantly increase salaries, in which I see happening in US and where I see happening in India, because there is just not enough supply. So we'll have to work on the supply. So that I think is another flavor I have, is how we can go and help these countries start semiconductor programs. One day, maybe they can help us grow our programs, but we need to invest and help them grow there. So that's kind of another theme I'm working on.
That's wonderful. Naveed, one of the things I've noticed in you is the ability to focus and expand. It's like build and broaden, as they say, into other areas. Do you see all this time we've been focused on making general purpose computer chips, CPUs, GPUs, and all that? Do you see this technology proliferating into other aspects of life? I mean, it's funny. One of the top golfers in the nation approached me and said, "Can you guys revolutionize the field of golf?" And I was like, "Yes, it's possible today." And where do you see what other aspects other than just programming? Do you see the hardware software stack getting verticalized into multiple markets?
I think the resistance of the vertical markets has been a very key concern. I think the prime example of that is the medical profession. doctors before COVID were resistant to everything we would like to do. Intel had a health initiative back in late 90s, right? I remember that. But everything would end with the doctor. The doctor will say, I'm too busy. I don't have any time to learn these new gadgets and all that. Whatever you do, try to help me, but I have no time. COVID changed that. So sometimes it takes that. I think now hospitals and doctors are doing the other way around. They're, and secondly, I think AI showed in case of, a radiology, at least started in radiology, that, an AI tool could be a much better radiologist, at least in certain verticals, than a human radiologist, because human radiologist has some limitations like eyesight and things like that, right? Same thing I think will happen like in surgeries. 5-7 years from now, people will not do surgeries, robots will do surgeries. The reason for that is because robot will be better at a surgery than a human being. Now, what humans will do is that they'll do the regression analysis and simulation of the surgery. So before the surgery, the surgeon will plan the surgery, do that on a virtual model of the human being. A whole surgery will be done and tested and make sure everything was done right. And then the real patient will be brought on. And when the real patient is brought on, you just replay what you just did on the virtual digital model of the patient, right? So this is an example where this will all happen. Now, this is new. We talked about that in 1990s, but there was no willingness of the doctors and the hospitals to actually adopt this vision. I believe that is very important. The second important thing is the students coming out of the universities were either doctors or engineers. Universities will have to change and create these integrated degrees. You could be a half doctor and a half engineer, right? You can be so I think those professionals are missing, that who understand the field of medicine, but at the same time understand technology in terms of hardware and software. Right? Now, if you talk about sports, lot of computing technology is being used in sports, uh, in cricket, in baseball, in American football. Lot of analysis part is already being done. Lot of the workouts, the gyms, if you go see their gyms have become highly automated. They're driven by AI, and they help the athletes to become get their maximum potential. Already that is happening. So I see that happening. I even see that happening in kitchen now. I've visited these modern kitchens where a lot of instrumentation and feedback is coming live as you're cooking things, building things, baking things. I think is happening. It can happen much faster, but again, it takes some event like COVID or something to promote. But I really see a future where computing and computing related technologies, semiconductors, playing a very major important role in our making our life more enjoyable, our life safer, more efficient, and we get to do the things that we are good at: envisioning, imagining, and computers and our devices doing what they are good at is taking ideas from us and laying it all out, detailing it. Chat GPT is just one example, but I think there are many things that will happen in the future. I see a future where humans will live a better life, higher quality life, and more efficient life, and that's made possible by integration of silicon and computing technologies into every vertical.
Thanks. And again, so you started off with how the DoD, DARPA were concerned about safety and security. Is that a real concern? And if so, as we get more and more automation into every area of life, how will we make sure that it's safer and more secure? What can be done, or how should we approach it, especially with the advent of open silicon and open source software? How can we make sure that there's more safety, more security?
I think the safety and security comes from the mindset of the people who started this industry, right? Because we never imagined that a computer will be a connected device. Our imagination in 70s and 80s was that it is a toaster. Toaster is not connected to anything. Toaster is a toaster, right? Now imagine if a toaster was connected to some other device, then we'll worry about, would I get the toast the way I like, or somebody else can hack into my toaster and change the settings that I have set up. So you're never worried about the safety and security of a toaster because you think that the toaster is a standalone device. The only thing it is connected to is a power nothing else. Now imagine a toaster had an internet connection, right? And now somebody can hack into it. And I'm taking a silly example because silly examples sometimes bring the point that somebody can change the way you like your toast, and and then you have a safety problem. We have the same situation with computers. We never thought they will be connected devices, and when the connection happened, we loved it. We said, wow, now many computers can work together. Wait a minute, now they can work together, but they can also be hacked together. Then we have, I'll tell you a joke about that. One of the companies that worked on security is a network processor company called Cavium. One of my friends was the CTO of that company. And once on a panel session, I asked him, "Is it possible to completely secure a computer system? How can you do that?" And he said, "Unplug it." So that tells you that safety and security will remain with us. As we advance, the security and safety problem will be remain with us. It is going to be a cat and mouse game. As we improve, the people who need to hack into our system to get financial benefit or whatever, and as these things become more prevalent, we'll have to become more vigilant. We will have to secure all our IoT devices. We'll have to secure all our data centers. Everything has to be secure, but it's not one day that you do it. I think this is going to be an ever learning field. As more software comes, more hardware comes, we'll have to keep on investing. And this is going to be a game, a cat and mouse game between the people who are on the evil side trying to hack into us and the people who are on the good side who are trying to protect. And this happens in police work. I mean, criminals today are a lot more intelligent and have technology savvy. So the police forces all over the world have become more technology savvy, right? So in physical security, you see the same thing. I see in computing security the same thing, that we will become more vigilant, we'll have better technology, but the people who attack us and people who want to gain illegal access will also continue. So this game will continue. We should have actual degrees in universities. We should have programs. People become experts from the day one, and this would be a legitimate job, just like we have police. We will have a job of people that spend all their life just like many people do today, but much wider scale, whose job will be to take care of our computing security, network security, and make sure that our homes and our businesses are secure. And I see that an ever increasing trend.
Yeah. In fact, I have somebody close in my family who spends his entire life on security, and I know exactly what you mean. I think it's going to become a very important part of life. Without using the term, you actually referred to digital twins when you talked about how simulations and entire visualization of the surgery process will transform the way surgeries are done to make them safer, more, you reduce the risk in the surgery, right? Do you see that happening in all areas of life or in only certain areas of life? Where will digital twins and analog twins play a part?
I see that happening in everything. I think the most extreme example of a digital twin is is a company called DE Shaw Research. DE Shaw Research has modeled uh, atoms and molecules at atomic level, and so what they are trying to do is to build a model of so that you never need a lab. Because if you could model all the molecules and atoms and their interactions at that level, there would be no need for now of course this needs supercomputers of a scale that humanity has not known. And for the last 10 years, DE Shaw Research has been actually working on that, and their goal is to just make big pharma and big chemistry irrelevant. Why? If you want to know which molecule would be good, give them the molecule, give them another molecule that has the interaction. They will tell you at the atomic level how the two molecules will interact. So this is an extreme example. Then I have seen examples of how factories have been digitized and their input and output has been digitized. If you do that, then it not just makes that factory very efficient, it makes the entire supply chain very efficient, because now you're not wasting time in between. If some factory is slow, then you can slow down the things coming in and things going out. You can take logistics can be optimized, people labor can be optimized, and all the various different materials and components that are coming into can be optimized. Imagine a nation in which the entire nation, where all factories are connected, end to end digitally. Imagine all the cars connected digitally. How many road accidents can be avoided if one car can communicate to the other car, I'm just involved in the accident, or I've seen an accident happen in front of me, or there is an accident in lane number 3 on which you are presently coming. Imagine that. So I see that all those things, because of the benefit, digitalization will happen, not because we are passionate about digitalization. I think it will happen because digitalization brings immense benefit, from safety, security, profit because it's more efficient, but more importantly, it removes waste in the society. We have so much waste. How many times we go to a doctor's appointment and we sit and wait? Why is that necessary? If doctors could schedule their appointments and predict very accurately how much each patient will take, we could also optimize all the patients coming in and out, and only one patient should be in the doctor's office, not 6, 10, 20 waiting. You go to any lab, you will find 20, 50 people waiting for their lab to be scheduled. All of that is just, you see the same thing happening. All the factories have large warehouses in which they keep the things before they move into the factory. That's an inefficiency, and all that can be handled if you have digital twins, and you can connect your society and factories and supply chains end to end. So I think this is going to happen. In some nations it is happening faster than others, but I think it will happen, and because it will happen because it is the right thing to do, from efficiency, productivity, and safety, and all those point of views.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. On my last job at Intel Foundry Services, we were looking at how to create robust ecosystems. Well, without a robust ecosystem, you really cannot get the efficiencies you're talking about. And it is a big challenge, but this is where a lot of energy is going. Speaking of efficiency, speaking of going global, speaking of making secure systems, I think sustainability will kind of follow from all this, right? Do you see the world becoming much more sustainable because of these kinds of efficiencies?
I think I think sustainability has to be driven uh, by a very deterministic humanity saying that we need a sustainable planet. Right now, the path we are on, we are wrecking the planet, not just from a climate change point of view, from a waste management point of view, from pollution in the oceans and the river, and it's a, you know I don't think 8 billion people can live on the planet, and the recklessly that we are living right now, it is creating a horrendous situation. So humanity has to decide that we have to live in a sustainable way, because otherwise this planet will become, not a place where we want to live. Old times, rich people used to think that, what, I have my enclave. My enclave is beautiful. I don't have to worry about the rest of the world. So that worked, and it worked from Roman times. Rich people always lived in cleaner areas. They didn't have to worry about non-clean areas. They didn't even go there. It is even true in India. In the royals used to live in their mahals. If you go visit their mahals, there are acres and acres, the thousands of acres of a mahal. So they never have to go outside to see what stuff is on the streets of a city. So we all have a desire to live in a beautiful place. We all have a desire to live in a clean place. Problem is, we always thought my cleanliness doesn't is not related to my neighbor's cleanliness. My clean environment is not real. I can live in a clean environment. Like British used to always live in hill stations, not worrying about what is happening down in the lower parts of India. Why? Because they have clean air. They can live in a healthier environment in a clean air, right? But what happens if there are no hill stations? What happens? There are no places where you could go. I think this is where we are at right now. I think everybody is coming to a point where we think that sustainability is a joint common goal. Problem with that is that the poor nations are saying, wait a minute, the rich nations already became developed using cheap power, polluting the whole world. Now my turn comes, and now I'm being asked, you use more expensive power. So I think what we need to do is to find cheaper way, a lower cost power. I don't think it is that difficult. I think humanity decided 10 years ago we want electric vehicles. We have electric vehicles. Humanity decided 10 years ago that we want a better battery. Look at that, hundreds of startups. If humanity decides we want lowest cost power and put the right incentives in place, I would tell you that 10, 15, 25 years from now, we will have power at 1/10 or 1/20th of what we have today. I think it is fundamentally possible, but I think it's again getting a consensus at the level of humanity. And I think people are getting there. I think you talk to most people, even in developing countries, people can see that if we don't live in a sustainable way, eventually we will wreck this whole atmosphere, wreck this whole planet. So I think we have to come together as a human race. But fundamentally, technology can be developed, is being developed. And whenever humanity has asked us to develop any technology, we have responded. Look at where internal combustion engine is today in the last 15 years. Amazing, right? Look at where electric vehicles are today. Amazing. Look at what is happening with rockets, right? I mean, NASA used to tell us that you can only launch one rocket, and the whole humanity used to stand around and watch. Oh, one rocket going up, and it was a big event. SpaceX launches rockets every day, and nobody even notices they are being launched. It's no longer an event. They made it possible, right? So when humanity focuses on a problem, we can get there. Sustainability is one such thing. I think we as a human race have to come together and say that this planet is a very small place. We are wrecking it together, and we need to clean up our act. And technology that is needed to clean up, technology that is sustainable, can be developed, will be developed, because we have enough intelligence on planet Earth. We can do it.
Thanks again, Naveed. I have a question about your boldness. I find that you're one of the few on LinkedIn and other media who speaks your mind out without, worrying about what the boss is going to say, or like several layers of bosses. Do you see our jobs changing? Because as long as you're in a big company, there are many constraints on what you can and cannot say. Uh, do you see that our workplaces are going to change? Will we have more smaller companies with this whole open source movement? What do you see happening to our work, the future of work?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think the companies should encourage boldness. And let's say one works for Intel, and if that person's opinion is not what is the prevalent thought at Intel at that time, let's say, that person can give this idea to his friends. They can write about it. If that guy is passionate about it, he can talk about that, to many other ways that people can bring this idea to the marketplace anyway. So I think it would be better for large companies to encourage people that if you have ideas which is counter to what we are doing, it's okay. And it will test out your ideas and things like that. And who knows, maybe somebody has a better idea, and it comes to the front. I think boldness should be encouraged, I think, even in large companies, and we should not have a herd mentality where everybody has to toe a line. I think debate is always good to see better ideas come. And the good news is that once the debate is over, the good ideas flourish, then everybody's behind that. And then there's no debate. Then you run because it has been debated and move forward. The as far as the future of workplace, I see that during COVID, I think I realized that the innovation and collaboration at a human personal level is very important. You can do routine work, you can do some other work, but to come up with any new ideas, I think those days where Newton sits under an apple tree and apple falls in head were long gone. Most of the major innovations that have happened in last 50 years are teams of 5, 10, 50, 100 bigger teams. You can look at big pharma, you can look at semiconductor, you can look at software, doesn't matter. Chat GPT was not written by one guy, right? Intel processors are not designed by one guy, right? Microsoft doesn't do any of the major innovation with using one guy, and that's not possible anymore, right? So I think innovation will still require people getting together in smaller teams, medium teams, bigger teams to exchange ideas at a personal level. So I think we have to find hybrid of things that we must do together, and things that we can do apart from each other in Zoom or in being a distributed model. I think this idea that one system fit all will go away, and we will have a hybrid system where people will divide their work and saying that, you know what, I think my job is 50% doing collaboration, so I will do that. And the 50% is where I need to be alone, where I'm synthesizing those ideas and writing them down and things like that. So I think if we give this freedom to individuals and not get into a herd mentality that no, we have decided everybody has to come 5 days to work and they have to work in the team and show up for. I think we should give a little bit of a freedom to folks so that managers and individuals can see what is the effective work I do in teams, and I need to be present and synergize my schedule with everybody else, and the things I can do better alone. And I can do that from office, I can do that from my home or from other distributed location, which is more conducive to other activities in my life. Finally, I think we invaded people's life. We asked people to take phone calls at night. We moved our design centers to India and other locations, forcing people to work at night. What right we have to tell them that first you work all night and then you have to come to work and be there? So we don't have that right. We took the right away from us when we expected our people to work in odd times of the night, and we made the distinction between office and home muddy by actually asking people to work in these offshore centers. And so we muddied the water long before COVID arrived, right? But people were, somehow managing that, right? But I think that has now brought to the forefront. I think we have to go to this hybrid model, and I think hybrid model, different companies will respond to it differently. But I don't think one system fit all is going to be there.
I see. I really liked your enthusiasm and optimism about the future, uh, and I want to hear from you any closing words about it and how we can all make this world a much better place.
So I'm a very big fan of a book called Talent is Overrated. And that book talks about how anybody can become a high performing person. And there is nothing called talent. Nobody is born with any amazing capabilities they come to earth with. And by studying over 3,000 people over the last 30 years, we have never found a gene in anybody which related to playing a piano, or we didn't find any DNA evidence of them. The main thing is all about working hard, having people around you who mentor you, listening to your mentors, improving you every day. So, my belief for myself, I'm a very ordinary person. I have very ordinary skills, but I've been able to use those skills. I had great fortune to have great mentors and teachers. I had the patience of listening to those mentors and applying the ideas they gave me. I think everybody can be a star. Everybody can achieve huge thing. The formula is not that complicated. Nobody should be denied such opportunities by saying, oh, you don't have the talent and you cannot do that. Of course, in certain physical games and physical situations, there might be physical limitations. But barring that, I think my uh, thought process is that everybody in the world can become whatever they want to be. Uh, and I think it's a very open world, and I wish that everybody should try for whatever they want to be. And our job should be to enable everybody to the best they can be.
You remind me of that advertisement they used to have in the 90s by the military: be all that you can be, join the army. So you're actually asking.
Army actually does that. Army actually
That's
takes
true.
fairly
That's
ordinary
true.
people and teach them a lot of very useful skills that they can
Yes.
use in life. And so it does. So I think we should do the same. We should just see every person as an extremely capable. I consider every person is a Elon Musk. Everybody is Jeff Bezos. It's just the parents and the teachers and the people around them just didn't identify what is the skill that needs to be improved, and they didn't apply themselves. But everybody can be. And imagine a world where we have 10 million Jeff Bezos and we have 100 million Elon Musks. What would that world be? It's an amazing world.
Yeah, in fact, I worked with an F-16 fighter pilot trainer when I was at Vericity and Cadence, and Ilana Golan was an amazing challenger. She would challenge us all together to achieve amazing things. And today she runs an angel network, a venture network, and she's doing amazing things. And I truly agree with you that we have categorized ourselves and put blinkers on that are stymieing our future. So with that note, I'm going to end here. And people, if you have any questions, any suggestions on how to make this even better, and if you would like to come on the show, please call. You know where to find me. And I'm so excited about the future and what's possible. I see an edge to edge transformation happening, and people like Naveed, at least as thought leaders and as entrepreneurs, are leading the way, and we need to all work on it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.